Trapping is a subject of controversy in some urban areas. A lot of people don't understand it, but we still have trappers, not only throughout Michigan, but throughout the country. Why, this was an American tradition that goes back to colonial times. Damian Lunning is a full-time year-round trapper up around the Mayo area. We're going to visit him and bring you the story on trapping, along with a lot more. So stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night. Time for Michigan Outdoors.
From the rugged shore.
Driving the back roads, a big part of the day for a trapper. Running a trap line isn't something you do in your backyard. For many trappers, it means traveling 100 miles or more a day, and a four-wheel drive is a necessity. Modern trappers go after a number of fur bearers depending on the price. This past season, the market for beaver pelts has dropped, and many trappers have pulled their traps. This means more beaver problems, more flooded roads, flooded fields, and in some areas, flooded cabins. Damian Lunning is a full-time trapper, the last of an American tradition. He lives in Mayo and spends a lot of time removing nuisance beaver, and he took us along with him on his trap line.
Now this one you say there's no beaver in here?
It don't look like it. The ladder's straight up and down. Normally when there's beaver in it, it'll be tilted because they'll hit it hard enough to tilt it.
Oh, well, did you put all of these sticks in here?
Right. What I did is I laid this log across the stream here and then put the sticks in to narrow it channel down so the beaver will go right through my trap.
And this ladder is just stuck in the mud? Why don't you hoist it up here and we'll...
Just the water pressure holding it against that log.
Why don't we take it up and see what...
A sprung trap.
A sprung trap, so that means what?
It means that you see all the grass that's on it from the spring water has just tripped the trap.
Oh, so there was no animal in there at all.
You have very few misses in a set like this.
Well, go ahead and show me how you set this.
Okay.
If you were out here by yourself, you didn't have a good first mate.
Okay.
Trapper's mate.
I got a good first mate today. I'll have to reset this trap, so take a second here.
Now you wire together these ladders for each of your beaver sets?
Right. This is one type of a set I like, especially in the spring, because there's other animals around. In this particular set, you just take beaver or otter in it.
Oh, so I see. You set the trap before putting it on the ladder.
Right. Usually these are set at home, and I just carry the ladder with a set trap in. It's wired to...
Set at home, but they don't go off while you're walking around with them?
I wire them shut so they can't go off.
For beaver, Damian Lunning uses what's called a killer trap. It's set underwater, and death is quick and humane. No suffering for the animal.
That's it? Just that little trigger right there? Now, if you put your arm in there...
It smarts. I've accidentally had my arm and legs in them before. But you hear people say, "Oh, break your arm or break your leg." It's never broke mine yet.
What if we put the axe handle in there?
You can. It'll dent my axe handle.
It'll dent it? Well, yeah, okay, we'll use another stick.
What happens, this is on the ladder, down under the water, just like this. And the beaver comes swimming through and hits a trigger.
Whoa.
You know, it kills them just about instantly. Right. Usually gets them right behind the head, and they move very little.
Mm-hmm. So this is what is considered a humane conibear?
330 conibear.
This is the trap that's standard for beavers nowadays. It's called the conibear, and it doesn't hurt the animal or damage the pelt.
Now, would you take this ladder back and use it next year?
Yeah, this ladder comes home with me, and I pull my stakes out. And
why don't the beaver eat the ladder?
It's dead wood.
Oh.
They'll only eat live wood. So.
If it were live wood?
I wouldn't have a ladder. No, they just chew it right up.
Mm-hmm.
Beaver have invaded many areas in recent years where they'd be welcome if they didn't cause so much flooding. But these large rodents are continually building dams and creating lakes where nature doesn't provide them. Now, they often block streams near roads and flood the roads. That's why the road commissions in the north have permission to shoot beavers on sight, and they frequently do. The damage caused by beavers each year in Michigan runs into the millions of dollars. Road crews are as busy draining and repairing roads as the beavers are building their dams and flooding them again. Some of the dams are huge and have to be blown up with dynamite after the beavers are trapped out or relocated. The work that goes into beaver trapping back in these swamps and wetlands is something you really can't appreciate until you try it. It's hard, physical labor that doesn't appeal to a lot of people, especially for the money it pays. Damien kept far ahead of us. He walks fast. Sometimes, honestly, he runs from one place to another, but that's what it takes to make a living trapping. During the summer, he continues trapping, but with live traps, not killer traps. People pay him to catch beaver and move them to new locations. In the summer, the pelts aren't worth anything, but in the winter, the pelts are prime. This year, a good one was worth $50. That's after it's been skinned and dried, an operation that takes as much time as running the trap line itself. Damien's wife, Judy, does a lot of the skinning and preparation of the pelts. All that work is done after the sun goes down. While Damien works his trap lines and several other odd jobs, all of them outdoors, Judy works at a local bank. Sounds cornball to say the Lunning family is as busy as beavers, but they are. That's the life of a trapper, and not many people choose it as a full-time occupation. But let's keep in mind, in 1988, the trappers were the ones who originally came in and explored Michigan and laid the groundwork for many people behind them. We originally had a trapping economy in this state, and despite what urban society might think, that food comes from packages and leather comes from factories, animals and animal products are renewable resources. We use them for food and for clothing. We have since the beginning of time, and it's a safe bet we always will. With plastics and synthetic products come poisons and toxins, the destruction of our ozone layer, the changing of our climate. Trapping and hunting and fishing don't have these effects. They're a natural and important part of Michigan outdoors. If we thought more people had beaver meat in the freezer, Kathy, we would do a beaver recipe, but we're going to do small game surprise. Charlotte Self from Mount Pleasant sent us this recipe, and it is an excellent one.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to use chicken instead of...
Chicken?
Yeah, well, hey, there's no pheasant. And some bacon, cream of mushroom soup, a sour cream, and it called for dried beef. We're going to use dried venison, so we do actually have our wild game in here.
That is a small game surprise.
Yes, it is. The dried venison is absolutely perfect for this dish.
But she calls for dried beef.
Dried beef, dried chip beef, right.
Well, we just traded the pheasant for the chicken and
absolutely, all
beef
kinds
for
of
the venison.
substitutes. Going to wrap the bacon around the chicken breast here,
or pheasant breast, or grouse breasts.
or whatever you wanted to use, and go to layer that on top of the chipped venison. Going to make a cream sauce out of the cream of mushroom soup and a sour cream. And you can actually taste smoky flavor come through in this.
Now that's a simple type
Oh, this is one of the simplest recipes we've done, I think.
But you know, that sour cream and mushroom soup, no matter what the gourmets say, that it isn't, from scratch.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow, is it good?
Yeah, well, it's mild enough that your smoky flavor of your venison will come through.
No spices, huh?
None. You don't need any salt or anything with the bacon.
Huh.
Bake it for about an hour at 350-degree oven.
So, Mr. Garner, what do you think about the beef, venison, chicken, pheasant combination?
I am most pleased with this combination. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, Freddie, you could lay out probably the finest bed of freshly made noodles, homemade noodles,
absolutely.
and lay this over top of it. And I'll tell you, I am really surprised with this chipped venison or dried venison. Powerfully good stuff.
It is. You can taste the venison, and I'm not sure.
It's different than beef.
Do you think if this was pheasant or grouse or rabbit that you could really taste that?
Geez, I don't know, Fred, and I really don't care. It's such a wonderful recipe. Really, it's great the way it is.
Yeah, that's the beauty of that
Absolutely.
kind of wild meat in a recipe like this. It
You
tastes
can
great.
interchange it.
And Bob Garner still has a piece left.
Oh, my goodness.
You can keep your hands off it. In 1986, of the 4,564 stolen handguns reported to the Michigan State Police, what percent will be recovered? In 1986, 1,873 stolen handguns were recovered and returned to the owners by tracing the handgun registration. This represents a 40% recovery rate, far ahead of the 8% national average.
Before the salmon program, this fish right here was the big catch in the Great Lakes. You can tell by its forked tail it's a lake trout. Mark Keyes from Dalton, Georgia was fishing off Munising last year and caught this 32-incher. That's the kind of Lakers they grow in Lake Superior. Pete Hageney from Cawcolin caught one of these Saginaw River wonders, a 28-inch walleye trolling a Hottentot on opening day last year. Here's a 16-point buck. Nearly 10-inch tines taken last fall by handgun hunter Vaughn Sherwood from Jackson. He took it near home. It dressed out at 190 pounds. And talk about good eating, it's hard to beat a Michigan wild turkey. Robert Placido from New Baltimore. Bob, you got a bird in Ogemaw County with an 8.5-inch beard with a shotgun, 20-pounder. Did you eat the whole thing?
No, the wife helped me.
Oh, you had some teamwork on that. Well, I think it's appropriate to talk about how you cooked it.
Just did like any other bird, just like a butterball right out of Kroger's. You have to do nothing to it.
Okay, now that weighed 20 pounds. That was enough for you and your wife?
And the kids and the neighbors.
Great. Was it better eating than regular turkey?
It was better than any turkey you could get out of the store. The white meat was juicy. It was good.
I think, judging from Bob, that's as good a recommendation as you can take. Right? Congratulations, Bob. Thank you. Oh, I can taste it already. And maybe if you're a lucky turkey hunter this spring, you can join Bob Placido as our Michigan Outdoors Turkey Hunter of the Week.
A surge of raw sewage into a Muskegon River marsh has been stopped. The marsh was filled with sewage during a repair on a sewer main. Biologists found belly-up bass, panfish, and carp in the local area. Bass fishing began last Friday on Cass, Pontiac, and Kent Lakes in Oakland County, Holloway Reservoir in Genesee, Muskegon Lake, and also on Hardy Pond in Newaygo County. Now remember, this is a catch and release season only. Governor Blanchard will sign into law this week a bill to create lifetime hunting and fishing licenses. The bill was sponsored by Representative Tom Scott of Burton. Representatives from the Michigan Duck Hunters Association and the Michigan DNR are headed to Wisconsin to harvest wild celery tubers. They'll replant them here in Michigan to establish wild celery beds for canvasback ducks. Leftover wild turkey permits go on sale at 9 a.m. Wednesday morning at DNR offices in Crystal Falls, Gaylord, and Allegan. A couple of months ago, there was a big fuss over who was going to get the concession contract for the state fair. Now, what's the sale of hot dogs got to do with hunting or fishing? Well, unfortunately, a lot. Now, the state fair has been the responsibility of the DNR for the better part of a decade. And years ago, the powers to be in Lansing were miffed at the way the Department of Agriculture was running it, so they assigned it to the DNR. And while the DNR has done a good job, the state fair is not really up their alley. Resolving the recent hot dog contract sapped a lot of time from the DNR top brass, including Director Geyer. So what happened to fish and game management while the head honchos were up to their ears in weenies? You guessed it, it took a back seat. It's time that the DNR divested itself of programs and problems which are not directly related to hunting, fishing, forests, parks, and the like. And they can begin by getting rid of the state fair and let some other department handle the politics of hot dogs.
We get letters and photos to identify in our mailbag. Mike Hundley from Flint was excited about this fish he caught on a Mr. Twister in the Flint River. In his letter, he said, "Having never seen an alewife of this size, I immediately put it in the car and went to a couple of our local sports shops, and they too confirmed its species. They were very surprised too at its size." Well, if this fish was an alewife, Mike, it would be a record. Saltwater alewives get a foot long in the ocean, but in freshwater, they rarely exceed 6 inches. Now this fish is easily confused with alewives, but it's a gizzard shad, rarely caught by anglers. They can grow up to 18 inches though in the Great Lakes and weigh up to 3 pounds.
It's expected that well over 30,000 people will attend the festival. 60 nationally renowned wildlife artists will display over 1,000 original paintings, prints, photography, carvings, bronzes, and other three-dimensional art. I'll be there on Saturday as a judge in the state duck stamp competition. It's undoubtedly the biggest and best wildlife art exhibition ever to be held in Michigan. And if you missed a number, you can get it by calling the Michigan Travel Bureau on Friday during working hours.
On the Nescong Bay, a shallow body of water in Michigan's eastern upper peninsula. 3 hours of fishing, 3 nice walleye. Not bad considering her front was moving through and the fish had shut off. Harry Reinfelder owns a fishing resort on the South Shore, and he knows how to fish this bay. Talked to a fellow a couple of weeks ago who said they came up here for the first time, but the conditions were terrible. The water was all muddy, and they didn't do that well.
Well, probably they didn't do well, not because of muddy water. They did poorly because of the weather. The weather's a big factor. Water's always muddy. As long as the water's muddy, you'll catch walleyes. It's a shallow bay, and the light doesn't bother the walleye. We catch walleyes here in the middle of the afternoon. We don't have to wait till nighttime or at dark.
But there's sometimes an incredible number of boats out here. Hundreds of boats trolling back and forth in, what, 5 feet of water?
5 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet. I heard some guys with lead head jigs up in 2 foot of water the other day doing real good. Tip with a crawler or even a rubber tail on the thing. Just snake them through the weeds.
Okay, that's the first couple weeks of the season. But what about June, July?
Well, as it warms up, you'll find them a little bit deeper. When I say a little bit deeper, from 2 foot to 7 foot, 8 foot. At times, out in towards the shipping channel, get 12, 15, 20 foot of water. But most of the time, the bay warms. The surface temperature warms up quite a bit. But we've got the St. Mary's, coming down through here and eddying back into the bay. And the warmest that thing gets is usually about 60. That's tops. So the bay never really gets hot, for the fish. They're in here all year. Last year was an exception. We had high water. The wind didn't work up the bay, and we had clearer water. When you have clear water in Monascon Bay, the fish move to deeper water. But as long as it stays muddy, we got fish.
So you want the muddy water. You want a little bit of wind and roiled up.
You bet. As long as she stays muddy, we've got fish in this bay. And this year it looks real good. The water's down about 18 inches, and it's kind of murky, and we're catching fish. And that's the way we like it.
What techniques you catch fish on, though? Do you don't have to long line them, do you?
No. Well, I like people that long line them. I sell them new lures because they get snagged up. But no, the main thing is a crawler harness with the crawler on it, maybe about 35 feet out behind the boat with a split shot, BB size, or depending on how fast your boat's going. With lead head jigs, tiny tads. Tiny tads are a great thing up here. The lure is designed to go about 4 to 6 foot deep, and that's ideal for Monascon. Some guys do all right on some of the other lures, but they find they go a little too deep, and you're always hitting the bottom with them. The other thing is wrapless. If all else fails, a piece of worm on a hook and split shot will work good.
Now, what is on the bottom? When you say you get snagged here, there's not that many snags, are there? It isn't like a flooded reservoir.
No, you've got a lot of cabbage weeds, we call them, all over the bay. And we have some gravel bars. We have clay bottom. It's quite a mixture. A lot of crayfish, and I'm sure that's what draws the fish in here, and a lot of minnows. But a lot of weeds, that's the big factor. Weeds, you get hung up on the weeds all the time. But you have to, because that's where the fish are.
You have shallow water, murky water with weeds, minnows, crayfish, and that brings in the walleye, and what else?
People. It brings a lot of people in. No, brings
people,
muskie in. Muskie, you bet. There's a lot of muskie out there, and there's a lot of potential for muskie fishermen, but rarely do we have a muskie fisherman. But we catch a lot of muskie, and primarily because they're fishing a little too shallow for walleyes. But like I say every year, you know, the muskie fishermen, if they get up here and fish, some of them say that the water's too big of water, not enough structure. But those fish, those muskie are at certain times of year herded right up in a certain spot. And we know where that spot is, and that's where we go to get our muskie when we get a chance.
It is a fish?
It is a fish.
It's a fish.
We have a muskie.
Grab my recorder.
We have a muskie. Get the net.
You got a muskie?
I think we do. Oh, yeah.
It does.
We have a muskie.
Nice fish, Fred. It's ready to go.
Holy. You caught the biggest muskie of your life with the camera on board.
Right. Just great. I couldn't have done better if I had planned it, Fred.
Yeah.
No, it was terrific. I had a chance to get out for a few hours. I purposely went over in the area where I know the muskie are. And put on a lure a little bit larger than I would normally use for walleye, just anticipating or hoping that I would hook into one. And the camera was rolling, we caught a muskie. Terrific.
Oh, look at that. Get the net.
Talk about excitement. That fish caught us all by surprise. Bob Garner handed Harry the net without extending the handle. We were in a quiet panic, because this is a critical point where most big fish are lost.
Holy cow! Oh my gosh! What a fish! All right! Holy cow! Hold that up! Whoa! Whoa!
It looked easy. That muskie almost jumped into the net. Later that day, we caught a nice stringer of walleye and pike. Good eating fish from Muskong Bay and impressive in their own right. The kind of fish the bay produces all the time. But there's no doubt, on this day, Harry Reinfelder's 34-pound muskie stole the show.
More information on the subjects we cover on Michigan Outdoors can be found in Fred Trost's Outdoor Digest magazine. The March-April issue has hunting, fishing, shooting, and whitetail deer articles, an entry form and rules for the Stroh's Hunting and Fishing Awards, a listing of some of the best taxidermists around the state. The 16-page Outdoors Forever supplement covers safety, health, and a special section on barrier-free outdoors. The show pages detail.
I can't guarantee you can catch a 34-pound muskie like Harry Reinfelder's, but you can see that muskie at our Hunting and Fishing Museum in Houghton Lake. Also, Damian Lunning and his wife will be there various times with trapping information. Great couple, interesting information. Here's some interesting information. The winter is over for deer. A few high spots in the UP above 100, but hey, the worst of it is done in the northern lower peninsula. They're not even keeping the deer severity index anymore. The deer are scattered and having a good time with lots to eat. As far as fishing goes, well, we have some areas. The circled ones are where we have limit catches. Salmon in the St. Clair River, hog walleye, the biggest Bill has ever seen, and more of them down around Trenton. Coho jacks off of Saugatuck, steelhead off of Pentwater. There's a few steelhead and browns around the state, few perch in Muskong Bay. Bluegills and brook trout up around Lake Gogebic. According to the root cellar, they're getting limit catches up there. All in all, the fishing is picking up every day. As far as ice fishing goes, I'm not even going to tell you about the ice. It's bad all over, and if there is some good ice, it's not going to be good for very long. If you can, though, get outdoors this weekend. It's a great place to be. See you next week.
From the rugged shore and woodlands of the north, its history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around again, and all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan.
Next week on Michigan Outdoors, we're going to talk about wild turkey hunting. Bob Garner's an expert. He knows how to do it and where, and he's going to show you. We'll bring you some wild turkeys up close. Of course, great recipe and a lot more, so join us right here on PBS.
Sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can. It tells you of the beauty in the state of Michigan.
Michigan Outdoors is a production of Fred Trost Outdoors Club and Outdoors Forever, with grants from the Stroh Brewery Company, makers of Stroh's and Stroh Light, fire brewed for smoother taste. Stroh's is spoken here. And Auto Owners Insurance Company for all your life, home, car, and business insurance needs. Available through your local independent auto owners agent listed in the yellow pages under insurance.